Hello friends, and welcome back to the show. We had a repeat guest in the studio today, Mr. Chris Bates. It's been almost a year since he was on the show the first time, and we talked all about dating. He was currently writing his book at the time called The Dating Edge. He was looking for his Mrs. Right, and we brought him back because he published the book. He got the girl, and now we're shifting into, yes, a dating conversation and how to find your partner, but a relationship conversation, how to deepen intimacy and trust. Of course, you might know that Valentine's Day is coming up. We touch on romance and how to become the most honest and authentic version of ourselves so that we can have the kind of radical relationship that we all dream of having. We talk about what men can do to increase their dating proficiency, increase their confidence, how to approach women the right way, and all of the things not to do to make sure that you set yourself up for success to finding your life partner. And we talk about all of the manner of things, men's mental health, how to just thrive in this crazy world, creation, consumption, writing. Let's get into it with Chris Bates. Mr. Bates, we're back again. It's been almost a year and a lot changes. If you watched the last episode, I had a haircut. You were writing a book. Now you've published the book. What else is new in the world of Bates, man? What's going on?
I mean, the book was the big thing. And the more feedback I get from it, the more I realize it's so much more health adjacent than I intended it to be. Right? That's why I got into the dating side of things, because most people want to focus on health in order to be with the right person. They want to be the most attractive version of themselves.
Yeah.
And so, but I thought I was pivoting away from it. And in some ways I doubled down on it. So I'm really excited to talk more about those concepts today, because as I work with more guys, talk with more people and women, in fact, even though I wrote the book for men, I hear from a ton of women, and I get to have all these wonderful conversations and continue to collect anecdata on what people perceive as attraction, how that relates to health and the book and everything like that.
It's cool, man. Yeah, we were talking in that first conversation, like how it was challenging you to condense your ideas and how it's really clarifying though. And you know, you were in it at that point. I think you were like deep in the process. So then to go through the whole extra bits of now, all right, it's finished. Now you got to publish. Now you got to put it out there. Now you're probably wondering, is anyone going to buy it? To get the feedback must be quite validating, I imagine.
It is. And you're right in terms of once the book is out, promoting it is a whole nother book, right? Almost. And I had a little bit of postpartum depression from birthing the book into the world. If you've had a child, don't hate me for saying that, but it really does feel like that. There were a few weeks where I was like, okay, now what? And so really getting into the right hands is a challenge. And this is a little bit of a spinoff, but I just had a memory that was triggered. You have been thinking about writing a book. We talked about it last time. Yeah. Has that changed since our last conversation?
It's taken more shape, because what I started to do was realize that I do want to write a book eventually. I think what I came to, like the middle ground that I'm doing right now, is just writing a lot more on Substack. So it's like serving as a middle ground. It's very similar to you. What I'm really trying to do, and what I've been thinking about in particular a lot, probably since that conversation, but certainly in the last few months, is like, what is it that I actually do? Because I know on the surface, it's kind of like what you do. I help people get healthy, but that's so broad, right? And it's so vast. And I got really tapped into this idea that a lot of podcast bros talk about these days, this idea of agency. Like George Mack wrote this incredible essay on like being a high agency person, and I read it and it resonated a lot. And I kind of thought about that, and I was like, I think that's what I do with coaching. And I came up with this idea of the mirrors. Like what I actually do is help people with their agency in health, in movement, in vocation or career, in their relationships, and in their minds. Because what I realized is most people are just outsourcing an awful lot of what to think and what to do to their favorite influencer or their favorite expert or the Huberman podcast or the Chris Williamson show, which is fine. You know, we should listen to people that have got some skin in the game and they're ahead of us in domains that we like. But I think what's happened now because of the consumption culture is we've just gone a bit too far that way, a bit too much in the consumption of other people's opinions of how we should live our life, or what is this, that, and the other, and less of just like, what is mine and how can I find that? Because even with health, right? Like the food piece is the common one. What should I eat? We're the only animal walking the face of the earth remotely confused about that. Now, granted, we're also the only animal that does this and flies planes and all manner of stuff. So I get it. But that to me is a fundamental loss of agency. When people struggle with wrestling with their thoughts and the shadow, that's a bit of a loss of agency. They don't have the tools. So it's like about equipping people with the tool, but always trying to like put it back to the person of like, just use this as some kind of like lighthouse, but like really integrate it into your system. Really use it as a way to increase your own agency. So I've been writing again more so to clarify what that is, because it's tricky sometimes. Like, what do you do? I didn't feel comfortable with just saying a health coach. I didn't want to call myself a life coach because that sounds kind of cunty. And vague. And vague. And there's a lot of baggage because there's a lot of, the coaching industry is the Wild West.
Yeah,
anybody
really
can call themselves a coach. There's no coaching police out there being like, actually, no, he's not a coach or she's not a coach. Most of them are lying, I think. Most of them are performing. Most of them don't care about transformation. They care about transactions. They just want money. So I was like, ooh, I don't know. I'm having this like I said, an identity crisis. I chopped all my hair off. I'm like thinking about stuff. And I will write about one day. It is a will, but I'm just substacking it for now.
And it does matter in terms of timing. And I think the fact that you're writing, in fact, I don't know that we went into this expecting to talk about it, but writing is one of the most beautiful things that I've ever done. And I don't think that that's unique to me. I don't think I was born a writer. I think all humans have a proclivity to want to write, to analyze their thoughts in a different format, in a different dimension. And what you're talking about with all of this is actually related to one of the principles of the book, which is, trust your intuition. And I think the best coaches and the best way to approach health is to consider things outside of yourself, but let your inclinations lead you. And it is about agency. And that applies in dating. It applies in relationships. It applies in health, because there's 9 million ways to skin a cat. And that's why I like this idea of shooting for the 20% of effort for 80% of the results. The kind of Pareto's distribution principle of action. And I think, again, that applies for writing and sussing out if you want to write, because you're taking action to discover. If people are looking to date well or find the right relationship, they have to take action over analysis paralysis. And it's the same thing in health. The reason that I worked at Heart and Soil before doing what I'm doing now, the reason I'm even here is because I wanted to use the process of elimination to figure out what is the best way to attack something is to get what I want. And it's really not analysis paralysis. That's one of the worst things. And so, it's just interesting that you said all that, because I really think cross-referencing action and intuition is one of the most powerful duos.
Oh, it's everything, man. And it's so interesting you're using specific words here, because I've been rolling out a coaching framework for our internal communities, and something we're going to ground and weave into more of our messaging here. And I've realized that people need less steps and they need a better orienting compass that teaches them agency. And then, we can build processes inside of that, of like education around food and whatnot. But I came up with these 4 truths, and number 1 is nourish. So it's nourish, eliminate, move, create. And you just said 2 of them: eliminate noise, and create. Do, like actually take action. So ruthless elimination of the things that no longer serve you. And to a degree, eliminate, or at least limit the amount of noise coming in that's pulling you away from your own agency, so that you can actually take action and create the life that you're looking for. And a part of in the creation bucket is, why do we do anything? It's ultimately to create the most radical, beautiful life that we're head over heels in love with. And that includes people, it includes relationships, it includes nourishing food and nourishing people. But inside of the word creation is this idea, or this tension between consumption and creation. And I think we've got very consumptive for information, because it's really good, and it's mental masturbation is the best term for it, because it feels like the real thing, and you get your end away, but it's not the real thing, and it's not as good as the real thing. Masturbation will never be the thing of like sharing space with another person, much like mentally masturbating and endlessly consuming information. You feel really good because you're like, I've got all of these ideas. But this idea that knowledge is power is folly. Knowledge is potential. It only becomes powerful if it's applied, and the only way you apply anything is through action. So it's really interesting that we're arriving at similar, what I think are fundamental truths to the human conundrum through our own avenues, but there is a lot of overlap in the language too.
That's what I realized in writing the book, and I call it pivoting, because as I pivot to the dating world, I realize I'm kind of like swinging back to the health world simultaneously. Is everything's the same. The underlying truths are all the same. Like if you talk about the importance of setting expectations, radical transparency, cutting out the noise. Again, health, relationships, dating, the relationship you have with yourself, you can benefit in every single sector that way. And so in a search for niche truths, you almost discover the underlying themes.
Yeah.
And it chips away at ambiguity. I think peace is one of the most fragile and rare resources in the modern world. And the action being the antidote to doubt, the process of elimination. It's really about cutting down on ambiguity. And in decision-making processes. Yeah, it's just so interesting. I know we blew up super macro, but it is related to not only these topics, but I think a lot of things that people struggle with.
Yeah, it's all connected. I was thinking about peace this morning. I was just, it's what I do in the morning. A part of my creative process is talking, which is why I love podcasting, because I think talking is thinking out loud. I think an even deeper step of thinking out loud is writing. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss this, so I'm glad we came back to writing for a moment, because you reminded me of something a teacher told me many years ago, and it stuck with me. I don't even know if it's true, but I don't really care if it's true. I care if it's useful, and this was very useful for me. And I feel like there's a truism in it because it feels right. And what he basically said was, we were talking about like journaling and the importance of like writing and self-reflection. And he was a spiritual teacher. So I asked him, is there a spiritual significance to the act of self-reflection in the form of journaling? And he said, that's a wonderful question. He said, you're a health guy. So you probably know that when you're an embryo, when your cells start to divide, there's the gut-brain connection is similar cells that divide and they stay connected through the enteric nervous system. Well, he said similarly, if you look at it through a certain philosophy of teaching, that on the chakra system, on the meridian system, the heart and the hands are connected. So when you write or type, as we do in modern worlds, what you're actually doing sometimes is bypassing the brain and writing from a place that's more intuitive, writing from a place that's more connected to the heart. And I think that's why it is so clarifying for people. I had a friend reach out recently and was like, I was dealing with something, I was struggling a lot, and I just felt compelled because of something you said that I should just write. And he said, I ended up writing for like an hour, and I was just writing. And he was like, it was the most profound thing I've done in probably years. And it reminded me of that. I'm like, yeah, because I think you're getting out of your head in a particular kind of way, and you're connecting to something that is more like that fundamental underlying truth of what you already know.
Yeah.
This was a guy that has the tendency, like we all do, to wrestle with something and then say, well, let me have a dialogue with ChatGPT maybe, or let me Google what Huberman said about this, or let me see if there's this podcast about this. And instead, he consulted his own self, his own wisdom. And he was like, I came up with better insights and better ideas than I probably could have doing it any other way, because I was actually talking to myself. And I think that's the really cool thing about this conversation is everything you seek is inside of you. Ultimately, when it comes down to the fundamental truth layer, you might not know about macros and micros and what's in liver, but like the fundamental truths of being a happy, healthy, integrated human, they do boil down to some fundamental truths. And I do think that writing and self-reflection is a way that you can clarify that and fine-tune a little bit more of that thing that you said about acting on your intuition.
Yeah. And the versions of how you write or explore these thoughts, process these thoughts can be different. For me, even though I loved writing the book, I don't normally write. I used to love to write. But what I love to do is walk and talk, or I call them stud strolls when I catch up with my boys. And I go on a couple hundred of those a year. It's one of my few hobbies. But I wonder if the whole idea of the heart and the hands is similar with the heart and the feet, because there's something when you have this motion, and there's a neurological terminology that I'm missing, maybe you know it, of processing things out loud to someone, but you're both facing the same direction, and you have this rhythmic left, right, left, right. And I found that my best ideas or my best discoveries about myself or realizations or being able to cut away the noise or the ability to ask for help when I wouldn't have been able to in the past, and just my overall mental and physical health increased, not because of the sunlight and steps, even though those are great, and the fresh air, but the ability to share my raw thoughts with someone else and process that with them and vice versa. And so that's my version, I would say, of journaling. I don't really journal, and nothing against it, but I think it's more of a, what's your preferential format for dealing with the things that we get so busy, we just got clutter. It just keeps stacking up. We keep shoving it under the rug, and then we're backfilled for however many mental capacity seconds. We don't have those seconds to spare. But then when you do set aside the time to only do that, you can actually process so much.
Yes.
So much.
Yeah. Because the things that you are like avoiding or they're getting backlogged, you could call them problems that you're wrestling with right now. And one of the things about walking, I think cognitive behavioral therapy discovered this on accident, but they realized that there is something about the energy of walking through space which takes a psychological fear or a problem and it shrinks it. Because there is an actual energy in the momentum of moving forward that feels like you're no longer in retreat. You're no longer hiding from something. You're no longer like in a defensive posture. You're taking agency over the thing. So walking is wonderful. Walking and talking is extra beneficial. Probably walking and talking with another person that you can trust is probably the pinnacle of that, because you also get to practice all other manner of things like opening up, being vulnerable. If that's somebody that you trust and you value their opinion, they can absorb it and they can give you some feedback. The nature of having a shadow is that you can't see it. That's why it's called a shadow, right? And other people are often great mirrors, and they're like, well, have you ever saw it this way? And you're like, no, actually, you're onto something. So I think you've got, you've tapped into something again that's so profound and so useful. And
simple, right? Simple. It doesn't require you listening to a million podcasts and understanding how to cellular level how ATP works in order to reap the benefits from that. And the thing about therapy is it existed before there was a license for it.
Yeah.
And I really believe that it's the things that we're talking about now, whether that's thinking, reflecting, writing, or discourse with a trusted friend.
Coming back to this idea of like trusting your intuition, what would you say to someone who's trying to discern whether the voice is intuition or it's fear or it's like scarcity? Like, is this my higher self? Is this my intuition? Or is this my trauma? Is this my insecurities?
That's a really good question. It's so difficult to discern. I think discernment is the elusive thing that most people seek when they're processing this kind of thing or asking themselves this kind of question. And the practice that works for me and my clients is, I say, try to remove all the filters of what was imposed on you when you grew up, what your parents might expect of you, what your peers might expect of you, what you might expect of you, and what culture of the world, name all your filters, set them aside, and then just ask yourself, almost like a knee-jerk reaction, gun to the head kind of thing, what do I want? What feels right? And start there and kind of reverse engineer as you put the filters back into place. And it might seem very simple, but I don't think that a lot of the times we're willing to ask ourselves, if I was in a vacuum, what feels right? Because intuition is really hard to encapsulate. It's almost ineffable.
Yeah.
And therefore it's difficult to navigate. But I think that it requires a simple solution because of that.
Yeah.
Because it can be so overwhelming.
My wife is not a coach or anything like that, but she's surprisingly wise many times. And she had this example one time and I was like, that's genius. And she just like spun it up off the cuff. And she was like, whenever somebody's wrestling with like yes or no, stay or go, this or that, all they should do is get out a penny or a quarter and say, heads is this decision, tails is this one, and flip it. And in the moment it leaves the finger, they'll know which one they want it to land on. That's the right answer.
I love that.
And I was like, that's
answer.
fucking good. That's really fucking good.
That's so good. Yeah, where's she today? Can we pull up a third chair?
I've been trying to get her on the podcast for years, man. She won't have it.
The day she does, that'll be a special one.
It'll be a
I'll
good
listen
one.
To it.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. Yeah. So it's also really interesting because, right, you were writing this book and it was all about dating. And you were dating at the time, trying to find your person, and now you're in a relationship, correct? So like how validating is it not only personally to apply the principles to secure the partner, and what's changed now as you, I guess, as you think about things differently? Because I believe as coaches, authors, we're usually sharing what we're learning and trying to navigate for ourselves. So as of right now, you've solved the dating problem, at least for yourself. I'm sure you want to help other people with that. And now you're in the relationship problem. Like, how do you keep it healthy? How do you thrive? How do you continue to deepen connection and things like that? So how's the update there? Like, what's changed?
It's different, and it's great, and it's challenging, which maybe all things are that way, the trifecta. The challenge, though, mostly comes from me, I think, because you have the dating process is really exploratory. It's a lot of adventures, a lot of curiosity, and it's easy to get super excited about that. Also, the downsides are the grass is greener fallacy and reasonable standards, but high enough standards. And again, all these other cultural, I hate to use the term, icks or toxicities, but all of these modern things that aren't natural about the courtship. And then once you get into the right relationship, it's more of a marathon. And I'm a sprinter. I get really excited. I use that momentum, and our relationship is super beautiful, and I'm grateful for it. But I have to be diligent about the last principle of my book of never stop dating. Mm-hmm. Always continuing to court the person that you're with, because just like anything in life, almost like a stimulus in a workout, once you become desensitized to it, it tends to fall to the wayside. And so it's the irony in your very keen question is, I have the dating side nailed down, but I would not pretend to know the secrets for a relationship where you're sitting next to each other, holding hands and rocking chairs at your final sunset together before you're buried next to each other. That's what I want, but I wouldn't pretend to know the secret sauce for that. But I do think the idea of never stop dating is very powerful, and it doesn't sound particularly romantic, but I have to literally put it in my calendar because I'll get so caught up in, I need to do this for the business or for my health and this workout. I want to listen to this podcast. You got to do X, Y, and Z. And people can be so busy with what they have to do in their life. And it's not, I don't think people intend to let the relationship dim or be pulled away from their focal point. But there's also this realism you have to work with.
Yeah.
And so I try to spend one night in where it's just us doing whatever we want and bonding, and one night out and doing variants of activities, and set aside a few hours of time each, twice a week.
Yeah.
So that no matter what else is going on, we have these touch points to rekindle the flame or keep the flame going, And so it's interesting to be navigating that, but I'm teaching, the step prior.
Yeah.
Really specializing in the step prior.
Yeah, but keeping the dating thread in there is really valuable, I think, because you're right. You just need that high level of intentionality and protection of that, because if you don't, it's just very easy to become ships passing in the night, roommates that share a space and, connect every once in a while. And if the trajectory of your relationship is healthy and this is your life partner forever, and then maybe you want to bring kids into the world, it's only going to get increasingly complex.
Yeah.
And it's always easier to start healthy practices sooner. This is one of the things, whilst again, it might not seem like the most spontaneous and sexy and fun thing to be like schedule dates and schedule intimacy and things like that. But if you hear from people that have been in long-term relationships, especially when kids come into the mix, it's one of the things that people that have had long-term relationships often refer to as being a key for success, is to not stop dating, which is to just figure out how and who is watching your children. And regardless of what you're going through and how busy it is, like ideally probably every week or every Friday or at least every couple of weeks, you take time for you to date again.
Yeah.
To drop the roles for a minute of the ships passing in the night, the busyness, the kids have got to get to this practice and that, and this one's dealing with this, and come and sit around the fire or sit around the dinner table or share a cocktail or whatever it is and see each other again. And it's very, very important. And I think that relationships over the long term that fail, especially as that increased layer of complexity comes in, they've lost that, So I think it is a very fundamental rule that is really healthy to keep now and ingrain it now, so it's so dialed in for you, so that if you do have children in the future, it's there. It's a habit. It's just how you guys date,
Yeah. And there's so many other things that are important at the beginning of the dating phase that do carry through the relationship. And what I really love about my relationship with Mallory now, we've been together a little over a year, which is exciting, is that we were almost too transparent. We're both very blunt people, but there's a lot of congruency in that. And that has remained the case. If we ever need to talk to each other about anything, there's no wondering, okay, what is this? What is she thinking? Or she's wondering, what am I thinking? We're very upfront about saying, what we need, what we dislike, whatever. But that's such a small fraction of the time. And what I realize as I'm going through my relationship is what people need to look for in the beginning. And peace keeps coming up as this thing is one of the most sought after things for men, women too, but especially for men, which surprised me. I didn't realize that starting the process with the book. But as I get feedback from men, I'm working with men, I realize how important that is, and that men should be looking for that first, and it'll carry through the relationship. Radical transparency, ability to say what you want or desire or navigate tough conversations isn't something you want to put off. It's something you want to start with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, this is under the premise of someone who's looking to be in a relationship. I don't know what to tell people who are dating for other reasons, because I don't understand that lens. And I think it's really important that setting expectations, radical transparency, trusting your intuition, not procrastinating, willing to take action, because what we talked about with ambiguity is probably the leading cause of problems in the dating world and in relationships. Because if you're not willing to explicitly say something, if you're not willing to call something out or headline, or rather highlight something for you all to combat together, you're going to end up combating each other.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of things that are relevant that need to persist. It's just a different kind of race. It's a different kind of test to carry it from the dating world into a long-term relationship.
Yeah, no doubt. And it reminds me of this axiom, like easy now, hard later, harder now, easier later, because it is hard to be vulnerable and transparent and painfully truthful sometimes. Waiting really makes that easier, because certain roles get solidified the longer we're with a person.
Yeah.
And if we've had a hard time immediately when we know we're in this very exciting honeymoon phase, whatever you want to call it, and we practice it then before like the hooks are in too deep, let's say, it gets harder later because roles have been established and you haven't built this habit of being transparent with one another. So it can often be the saving grace of what can save a relationship that is on the brink, like that radical transparency.
Yeah.
But man, wouldn't it be better if you could do the hard right thing earlier and bear all of yourself to the degree that, you know, you're comfortable and you have the capacity to it, and that it's not performative too.
Yeah.
Because I've heard this, you know, this idea is in the zeitgeist now of like the performative man, you know, and men, we're really funny, right? We're really funny because really like what we're doing a lot of times is trying to get laid, and we subvert some cheeky little process and we're like, oh, women want vulnerability, I'll show them vulnerability, but it's performative vulnerability instead of honest vulnerability. And I've had many guests in that chair that are, you know, women talking about like the dating scene in Austin or in any major city, and they're like, yeah, there's a lot of performative men now too.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, evolutionarily, it's a different way to compete, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's like a skill set. It's like the birds that have the specific feathers and they're doing their little dance to win the mate. I mean, obviously that's more connected towards health, like have they got the nutrition and the genetics. But you could say it's adjacent. And I actually had someone ask me this. It's like, well, how do you know that you're not being performative, or that you're working with men who they're trying to use your ideas to execute them in a performative manner? I was like, I guess I don't. I would like to, you know, trust my intuition on that. But I do think when you're younger, you go through a phase of wanting to be perceived by women a certain way, or seeking these experiences that you haven't had before. And I don't think that that's evil, as long as you kind of set the expectation, like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I think when you deceive people, that's more evil. But there's tons of people who are dating casually or looking for experiences. They haven't had them for whatever reason. Maybe they're later or earlier in life. I don't think any of that is a bad thing. But I do think once you've experienced that, you realize how empty that is in the long run. Yeah. And I'm really interested in long-term investments, whether that's health, dating, or anything else. And so to me, it seems very obvious. When you put a lot into the casual dating, there's not a lot of long-term output. When you're afraid to be vulnerable, or you take the easier route in the short run, it's the harder route in the long run. And so that's a big reframe in the book, and something I try to stress to men and women is like, no matter how uncomfortable the conversation is, no matter how you might feel like you want to jump out of your skin, just rip off the Band-Aid. Yeah. Because you're going to be so much happier later on.
Yeah, the ripping off the Band-Aid is so trite and cliche, but it's so true.
I love it, that expression, because it is exactly
as soon as you feel it, like, just this idea that you're going to somehow feel more ready in a certain amount of time, at least in my experience, it's never been the case. Waiting almost makes it increasingly more complex because you increase the time between like idea or wanting to say that thing and burying it down. And what fills that gap is more stories and more baggage and more what ifs and more that instead of, if you're going to get in, like I always say this with a cold plunge, you'll see two different kinds of people approach the cold plunge or the cold ocean. You'll see like the tiptoer and they're like, and they're going to get in regardless, but they make it so much more difficult than it needs to be by tiptoeing in and prolonging that entire dance for like 30 seconds as opposed to the person like, all right, we're both getting in. I ain't going to tiptoe in. I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off. I'm just going to fucking dive in. If we're getting in, let's get in, you know, and it just is a fast track to getting it over with. And often on the other side of getting it over with, you realize it wasn't ever as scary as you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Like you share your deepest, darkest secret with someone. I've got to share this with them because I'm really connected to this person. I want to be vulnerable. And you wrestle with it for days and you're like, all right, I'm going to tell them. And you tell them and they're like, oh, okay. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Whether it's that fear of rejection or fear of, spending time on the wrong person, it's almost never as bad as what you're fearing. Yeah. And it's almost never even a tenth of that or any, I don't know, fraction that's worth the time it actually would cost you to figure it out by doing.
Yeah. It's always the antidote. Yeah. The action is the antidote. We suffer more in imagination than in reality was one of the lines from the Stoics. And it's so true. We torture ourselves up here, but the lived experience sometimes just having that. Here's a fun one. This might get us in trouble a little bit, but there was a trend going around recently on Instagram, and it was this guy, and he was like, "You need to be retard maxing. You just need to be retard maxing." And he went on to say that like it's kind of what we started with, this over intellectualization, this overthinking, this over planning, this productivity purgatory, this like whatever it is, like planning gooning, just like making, and he's just like, no. Retard max, just do the thing. Do the thing, because even if doing the thing ends up being the wrong thing, at least you're in motion, at least you're getting feedback, and at least you can pivot. But if you don't do the thing, like you're just torturing yourself. You're stuck in your head, and if you're in your head, you might as well be dead.
Yeah, and if you're retard maxing, that means a lot of grilled cheese, a lot of John Cena, and you're strong as hell.
We love it.
Carson knows what I'm talking about.
Cass is the OG retard maxer.
Yeah. I love that. I love that mentality.
You can take it with you. You can borrow that one. I'm not sure if it'll weave its way into your next book, but
no, I've been living under a rock recently, but I like that one a lot.
Yeah. Speaking of writing the book, just because of the nature of being a person that's constantly ironing out ideas, which means like changing ideas sometimes too, is there anything that you feel either very validated by that was in the book, or is there anything already that you're like, I'm not sure whether I had that right, or it needs updating already? Like that's the one thing I've always thought about writing is like it feels so concrete.
Yeah.
And then like, what if I changed my mind about that thing?
Yeah.
And I guess that's okay, but I'm just curious, being on the other side of it, whether you felt like that.
That's an excellent question, and I haven't got asked that yet. I do have an answer, but I will say, when I was writing it, I had more fear of that than after.
Yeah.
Because I had thought about and wrote about, and I mean, this took me multiple years, 20 drafts, probably 900 hours to write this book. And I was very happy with it. But I realized early on that any of my ideas that I wrote down, or rather the specific words I wrote, I had to be at peace with deleting them if they didn't serve the reader. Which it's difficult to write something you're like, wow, this is really good. And then think, oh, literally not one word that I just wrote might make it to the final product.
Yeah.
So that was a bit challenging. But once I accepted that, and then the final I read my own book and I cried because I just couldn't believe it was going to happen because I almost gave up so many times.
Yeah.
And then I also enjoyed my own book.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. It's going to work. It's not perfect. It'll never be perfect, but it'll work.
Yeah.
And so I still feel that way. And I'm sure, looking back, I'll change my mind and be like, oh, I could have said that better, this, that, and the other. But the only idea in there that kind of sticks out is I am so much a first date person. I think everyone should go on a first date and it should be dinner. I think a man should have the huevos to ask a woman out, offer to pick them up, take them out to dinner. I'm old school that way. Not every woman wants that. Not every man is willing to offer that. But what I realize is it's not about dinner. It's what that is communicating, what that means. And it's that the man is willing to ask for what they want. The woman is willing to accept or decline that request. And a man is chivalrous and intends to treat them well before he even knows he's guaranteed an outcome that he wants. And so that doesn't have to be dinner. And I wish I had gone into the nuance of that, and I did a little bit, but it could be mocktails. I think what's important is that two people have the ability to connect with minimal distractions in a nice atmosphere that's out of the ordinary, where there's the intention and the presence are the factors people are prioritizing. And I didn't really go into that nuance as much as I would have liked to in the book, but that's the only thing I've kind of changed my mind on. I stand pretty firm in everything else, but I'm sure as time goes on, that'll change.
Yeah. Well, why wouldn't it? You know, I'm sure if you think about, especially over a long enough timeline, that you've changed your mind on a lot of things. And I think that's really healthy to do. It's funny, you know, even thinking about Heart and Soil as a company, some of the detractors will challenge Paul Saladino, for example, because they're like, well, he wrote a book called The Carnivore Code, and now he eats 300 grams of carbohydrates. I'm like, he changed his mind. And he's open about why he changed his mind. Yeah. Why are you so triggered by that? Aren't we supposed to change our mind? I've changed my mind on a bunch of things. Yeah. I would be so surprised if I don't change my mind significantly on many things. So the book is, you know, because it's in print and it's there, it's just a reflection of how you were thinking about the thing at the time. Yeah. And you might update it 5 years from now, or might write a whole new different book. You know, some of my favorite authors have wrote all different kinds of books, whether they started with novels and then went to self-help or self-help to novels, because they change. But I think you're so right. Just like the example of asking the woman out on the date is, whatever happens after the date, whether that becomes your partner for life, is kind of irrelevant, because it's the process where the value is. Like the book being published and now getting nice reviews and hearing cool things from people is awesome. But that wasn't really what it was about for you. It's the process of actually doing it, putting yourself out there, having your thoughts synthesized and printed onto pages, and actually like having the very pleasurable other side of that, where it's like, I like this. This is good. Yeah.
And it's like that phrase with musicians: don't trust a musician who plays with their eyes open. If someone writes something and they don't really like it, that I become very suspicious. And I think for anyone that's considering writing something, whether that's a Substack or a book, you will enjoy it if no one else does. Yeah. And I knew that before I finished it, and that's the only reason I think I got through to the end, is that the process of writing the book was so helpful for me. So I knew whoever would read it, it would serve them. Yeah. But if no one did read it, it was still worth it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, and I think that's maybe the magic of writing that people miss, because we were thinking about, perception and will it be successful, or like, who am I to write this book? It's not even about that. It's, do you realize how much you'll serve yourself by attempting? Yeah. Just the attempt. That's really big.
It reminds me of, do you ever read Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act?
I have not.
So he's fascinating. I don't know if you know the guy. He looks like a mad scientist. He's got like balding on the top, like wild white hair coming out the back. He's always, exactly. He's always wearing raw optics, orange glasses. And he is one of the most sought after music producers in the industry. He's worked with everyone from like Run DMC to Aerosmith to Taylor Swift, like you name it. They all pay to like go out to this guy's kooky Malibu mansion. And he's like, I don't even really know what I do. He's like just a vibe master. And he's like, anything I ever create, he's like, basically, I don't care if they like it, because I'm not creating for them. I'm creating for me. And he's become the most sought after guy in the industry by not even, Taylor Swift's coming. I don't care what she wants. I'm going to listen. I'm going to create this thing for me using her music as the vehicle. It'll become a hit because he's got that ear for it, but he's not doing it for them. He's not doing it for an audience. He's doing it for himself, which is really cool. And it's a frame that I've tried to bring into everything that I create too, which is it's amazing if people find value in it. It's awesome to feel validated, whatever it is. Like, say you create a piece of content and you pour your heart and soul in it. There's value in just putting it out there, which is enough already. Yeah. But then if it hits and you get nice messages, it's extra validating, of course, but don't optimize for the latter and not the former. Like, make it really about the creative act, make it about the process. And everything else is icing on the cake, and it's really great to get affirmed that way. But just don't make it the primary goal. Otherwise, you're kind of chasing outcomes instead of process.
Exactly. And I don't mean to sound borderline nihilistic, because I'm not. And I think that's one of the most dangerous things. But your question about the book is similar to content. It's like, what if you say something in a piece of content? Well, you're going to create more. You might say something in a book, but your opinion will evolve. The hard truth of it is no one cares. Yeah. if it's meant to serve them, they'll care. If it triggers them, they'll care for a second. But if it's meant to serve them, it will last so much longer. If it's meant to serve you, it will stick with you for so much longer. So I see my book as a piece of content that's already piled beneath other things that have come up for me, but also especially in other people's eyes. And I think that's freeing, because there's not this idea that everyone's watching, everyone's going to judge.
Yeah.
The grand majority of people don't care.
Yeah.
But the people who it serves, it could potentially be life altering. And that's the same thing with men and women dating, especially men. I really believe that we need to be pursuing more. Dating apps aren't evil. Maybe that's an opinion that'll change about the book going forward, because I get a ton of pushback. But I think when you leverage, especially Hinge, the right way, it's a very useful tool to get in touch with people outside your current circles. And that's a really beautiful thing. Yeah. But it's designed to keep you using it. So you have to kind of, work around it. And luckily I've developed some strategies for that I feel very confident about, that worked for me multiple times. But whether it's that or approaching, I think men think, oh, well, like, especially in the modern world, this might get taped, or she might text this person, or maybe they know somebody, or I'm going to get rejected. But it's just like the book and the content. And I don't like the term shoot your shot, but that's essentially what it is. And it's going to get piled beneath all these other, rejections, opportunities, gossip, whatever. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
So if you feel drawn to someone, you're going to kick yourself 10 times more if you don't do it than if you do it and it fails. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to everything else that we're talking about. That same universal principle.
Yes. The weight of regret is heavier than the weight of failure.
Yeah.
Because at least with failure, you've got some kudos that you at least did it and tried. The regret is the eternal open torturous loop of what could have been. Mm-hmm. And that's tricky, that it's really interesting to me. Because I listen to shows like Modern Wisdom, for example, with Chris, and they focus a lot on dating dynamics in modern culture and stuff like that. Dating apps. People ask me about it a lot. When I do like a Q&A, what's your thoughts on dating apps? And it's very interesting for me to even begin to wrestle with that, because I was out of the game before dating apps were even a thing. Yeah. I met my wife in 2013. At that point, if somebody had met in an online dating website or something, you'd be like, okay, you're fucking weird. Yeah. Now probably but probably a significant amount of relationships probably started through one of these apps. So
I met Mallory on Hinge.
Right.
I would never, we talk about this, I would never have met her otherwise. We are so aligned, but we were just not in the same location or the same circles, which that's rare.
Yes.
But it's even more rare that like we had a 5-hour first date where we couldn't stop talking. And this is the only one I've ever dated where I'm like, wow, I see the potential that she'd be the mother of my children. And I met her on a dating app. That's not everyone's experience. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's possible.
Oh,
that's why I don't want to demonize it.
It's so good. Because my answer to it is the same every time. I always start with something like, it's very hard for me to think about how to navigate them because I've never used them. They definitely present unique challenges. Mm-hmm. Life is practice in a way, and there's definitely transactional components to this. Like people are optimizing the bios. It's like a dating CV and all of that stuff. And
like a landing page almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I always say, but I wouldn't throw all the baby out with the bathwater. I would be foolish to say that if I was a single guy that I wouldn't be on them because they're too transactional and fake and blah, 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 because I think they're a tool. And I think that as many wounds that have been perpetuated through those technologies, that I bet there's some amazing, thriving relationships that started that wouldn't exist if they didn't exist. And there you are. So I think it's just nuance, man. It's so much easier to be like bad or good as opposed to like, it can be both. It can be great sometimes.
And I think everyone should try both. Just realize, like, it's about setting expectations. Realize the apps function a certain way. They tend to have this kind of downside that's unique to them. As long as you accept that, it's not that hard to deal with it. But it's people expect something different out of it, or they expect it to not have these downsides, and then that's where they get frustrated and disappointed. And I get it. I've been there. A lot of people have. It's something that you have to kind of learn through experience. Yeah. But it can be useful. And approaching women in real life, or women kind of dropping the handkerchief for men to approach them in real life, those are both really good practices. It takes a lot of courage. And I think you have to be, there's a certain level of comfortability as well as confidence that someone needs to have in order for that to work out. And why not increase your proficiency at both?
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. I like that dropping the handkerchief thing. That's like an old, Victorian era thing, right? It was like a permission slip. And now it's even funny that that women are starting to like increasingly make the first move because, but if you look at stats, it's something like, 50% of young guys, which is like guys under 25, haven't approached a woman in the last 2 years. For various reasons. Maybe they're not confident. Maybe it's like a hangover of the Me Too era, the gym videos of this guy's looking at my butt. They don't want to they don't want to be in the limelight that way. But then if you poll women of the same age, like 85% of them want the man to make the first move. So you've got this thing that's not compatible. Men aren't approaching women because they're scared, and women want to be approached and they're not. So they're taking things into their own hands, which is flipping the dating polarity, because now women are taking on the masculine role of pursuing, and it's just not the way it was basically forever, and it's just so, I feel for people that are trying to find their person, because it's beautiful, and it's a really great self-growth challenge, right? To like navigate all of that, but it's a lot, man.
Yeah. Between my clients and my community, I love collecting anecdata, and I do see more women. The number one complaint is men don't approach me in public, or I found out a guy was into me, but he never messaged me or texted me to ask me out, and now I'm bummed. So logically, the flip side of that would be like, well, take more action, man. Like, go for it more often. But then when it comes to women pursuing men, one of the chief complaints I hear about men is most of the women who pursue them, they're not interested in. And they're also, or they're in that kind of masculine mode. And you can get to, what's the word? It's black and white with, feminine versus masculine. It's not, people aren't one or the other, right? There's different modes. Scale, exactly. But that's a big turnoff for a lot of guys. So whether it's Hinge or in real life, most of the women who approach men, it either doesn't turn into a relationship because it's kind of a fling, or the men are just not interested in the women who are approaching them because of this weird role reversal. And actually, third, women are often displeased in the long run, because if a man is willing to let the woman lead in that way, typically she's got to lead in other ways further down the line. And so there's a lot of, and it's not always that way, but there's some interesting trends I've noticed. And so for all of these big stats for the same podcast you've talked about that I've heard, I see that on a smaller layer for the anecdata that I'm collecting. Almost, exactly the same ratios. It's very interesting.
It's so interesting. Makes me think of other examples I've heard people talk about, like if something breaks in your house, even if you have the resources to hire somebody to come and fix it, your woman would almost certainly want to watch you fix it instead of pay somebody to fix it. Even if it was wildly inconvenient, even if it was not a financial stress because you've got an abundance of cash, when you call them to like come and mow your lawn or fix the pipes, a little bit of us like, you bitch. Because it's not that, it's like it's core, it's deep. It's deep in us, what that pursuit and that bravery and that courage to fix things, to take care of, to make the first move, all of that stuff is a strong signal that this is a strong provider type guy, and that does create that emotional, energetic resonance of safety. So I do think it's interesting, and I do think it's kind of sad that men have gotten to the place where so many aren't willing to do it. It's easy to say, just take more shots and you'll be all right. And I think even men actually probably understand that psychologically if they think about it for a minute, but they're still blocked, usually probably because they lack confidence and the fear of, rejection and all of that stuff. So tactically, what are some things that you do push men into to help them gain more confidence that would hopefully translate to them being able to approach more women in real life?
I think there's three things. One of the biggest things is reframing, especially like you said, with post Me Too stuff and modern culture. Most good men are afraid of being assertive and taking the lead, but they're not the ones who need to do less of that. Ironically, they're the ones who need to do more of that. And so reframing it as actually, no matter how a woman responds to your approach or your invitation, you're actually going to make her day. So that's the biggest thing is like, you don't have to worry about, it's the fringe of people that are going to take something the wrong way, or it's going to be a bad experience. The grand majority of the time, even if you don't get a woman's number, even if she doesn't say yes to a date, you are going to feel better and she's going to feel better. So you're actually giving her something. And women who are really good women understand the courage it takes for a man to initiate and to lead or ask them out on a date. So they're actually going to give you positive feedback, and they they wish they got approached more often. Even if you're not the guy they want to go on a date with, they're going to feel so good the rest of the day. I hear this from both men and women all the time. So it's a quick reframe of, even if it doesn't work out, you're actually benefiting someone else as well as yourself. It's like a gift to both of you. Yes.
Yeah. You get the rep, they get the... It feels nice. It feels nice.
It really does.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing is reps, like in the gym, you just got to be consistent with your volume. And that doesn't mean you'll never wonder, or you'll always have the right answer, or the loop will be closed in the way you want, or you won't have any fear behind this. It's just that it becomes more second nature.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't think you should be spending time on things that you don't have a little bit of fear about, because then it's probably not that exciting or worth your time. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Not even the challenge. Just, I know men that go on dates for saying they've gone on dates or to get validation from women. I'm like, well, if there's no fear of it not working out, you're probably not that interested.
Yeah, right.
And that's a whole nother topic. And then I think the third thing is tactically, it goes back to the long-term investment. If you really want to have a family, if you want to have peace with a partner, if you want somebody who understands you don't have to translate your heart to, it's going to require some pain and some trial and some error. So are you willing to do that or not? And I know that's dangerous, because with the incels and black pill stuff, is a lot of the times men don't think it's worth it. And I understand why. But I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we as men can make, because what I see later in life, in fact, some of my clients come to me later in life and they have a lot of regret because they prioritized money, having fun, all these other things, or they're like, I just don't want to spend my time on that. But then there's a crisis of purpose, fulfillment, belonging, and honestly, romance and attachment.
Yeah.
And they think that they don't need those things, but they always do. It's kind of like with the boss babes who prioritize everything over family or a relationship. They have a same coin, different sides, similar sense of regret. And so I guess a big part of my mission is to really fight off cynicism.
Yeah.
So when it comes to these tactical approaches, it goes back to the simplifying thing. It's like, look, let's do the reframe, let's get reps, and then let's understand the long-term goal. Yeah. And nothing else matters.
Yeah. Chris calls them unteachable lessons, these things that you hear a dime a dozen people say, but for some reason you're like, well, they don't apply to me, because if I was in that position, I'd be the special chosen one that could navigate it. So like, money won't buy you happiness is a classic one. How many rich people that have ascended the tops of material wealth will say, it was true. Money didn't buy me happiness. But when I think about money doesn't buy me happiness, I think money would probably buy me happiness, because I'm special and I'm different. But if I got all of that, I'd probably go, hey, you know what? They were right. Money didn't buy you happiness. Yeah. And a lot of those guys that you're talking about probably experiencing that. They optimized for the money and the material success to have to unfortunately learn an unteachable lesson, because the only way to learn it is to live it. And now they're like, man, I have this and I have a really nice, lifestyle, blah, blah, blah. But I'm lacking in the core things of what makes life worth living so often, which is simple. It's usually romance, a partnership, and a lot of the time, and maybe this is just my bias because I'm a parent, it's usually creating a family. That's the legacy, and it's really cool to do things, build businesses and write books and stuff, but it pales in comparison to that. And you hear it time and time again from people that either had that and had both and said, oh, this is way more important, or the people that had the material success but lacked that and experienced this deep regret and this deep feeling of sometimes depression and grievance of a life that they lost because they went for the wrong things, the wrong right things. And I air quote right, because that's what culture tells us, right? That's the boss babe, that's the myth. They're like, you don't need that, you don't need all this family archaic stuff. You can get all the fulfillment you need from building your career. And it's like, for a while, until it doesn't fulfill you anymore, until you're 45 and your reproductive years are behind you, and you've got just a litany of failed relationships behind you because you chose a bigger 401k, and it's wonderful that you have that, but I don't know if that's the solution. I think that, again, looking to the past gives us a lot of answers to some of the modern crises we face. And if I don't know what the meaning or purpose of life or anything like that is, but I think that we don't even get to pontificate about the meaning and purpose of life if we don't have kids. because there's no future to pontificate over. So it seems to me that like the purpose of life is probably to find your person and have babies.
Yeah.
And I know that's not like people will be like, oh my God, what a, you know, archaic monster. But it just seems pretty simple to me. Yeah. That's what it's supposed to be.
I'm going to say something I think a lot of people have a problem with. I don't think that a man that serves himself and not a greater cause, and not a woman, and not his children, and not his community, is happy with himself. Not one. Whether he could be performative, and he might be showing that he is, but I think deep down he's not. And I don't know that, but I'm willing to die in that hill. I'm willing to bet on that.
Yeah.
Because I've been there, and I've seen a lot of guys that have been there. And the irony to all of it is that when you serve those things, it actually exponentially increases the output in the things that you're already doing. If you're running a business, if you're trying to be healthy, if you're trying to publish a book, whatever the thing is as a man that you're driven to doing, even having fun, even having hobbies and doing unproductive things, it's different when you have other entities that you're responsible for. It breathes new life and motivation into all of those things. And I don't know why we as a culture see it as an either or. That's because they work so well together. And I would die on that hill. If I had to argue with 1,000 people in this room about it right now, I would probably die to the mob, because I believe that, if nothing else, to my core, you know.
I think that's a very solid take, man. I'd align with that. And I think about certain figures in our culture that have gone to the like depths of that, like the pinnacle of hedonism mountain, to come out the other side and say, like I did, Dan Bilzerian.
Yeah, that's the one I was just thinking about.
Is the pinnacle of that example. Like every man at some point in his life, like before you're fully developed, like years ago, remember like looking at his Instagram being like, that guy is living the coolest, most fun life ever. He's on a private yacht every weekend surrounded by like unbelievably gorgeous women, having sex with as many of them as he wants to. He's rich, he's famous. And now, like a few years later, not only has he come out and said it was all empty, like a guy that literally had what every guy thinks they want to actually get it and say it was empty. Sure, there was some fun along the way, but it was empty. And now I've also evolved into this new version of a parent. And I'm like, this is more fun than that. You know, that's like shiny objects and like pretty bums and boobs, but it pale in comparison to how rich and real this is. You know, these humans that I created with my best friend. Like, what? That's it right there. Yeah. So I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
Tucker Max is another one that comes to mind, because he
was like a dating guy back in the day.
And now he's got a ranch not far from here, and he's into this kind of stuff, and he's got a family, you know. And so it's just, and then the contrarian say, okay, well, do you have to experience that in order to see the value in it?
Right.
And that's a fair question.
Right.
I wouldn't say that you have to, but some people do find the truth by getting lost in the woods.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know.
Naval said it's easier to achieve your desires than to renounce them in the modern world, which to me means it's almost easier to become a Dan Bilzerian and try it out to find out like, actually, no, that isn't for me, than to be like a monk and say, I don't need that. Because what you're really doing is you're casting stones in your glass house. It's very easy for me to say like, a Ferrari wouldn't make me happy. But it could be cope also that I don't have the money to buy a Ferrari. And I'm trying to psychologically convince myself, it's just I would never spend that much money on a car.
Yeah.
And if I really sat with that, it might be easier actually to get the Ferrari and to figure it out whether it made me happy or not. And, that's the world of opportunity in a way. So it is interesting. And I guess it's beneficial to the conversation to have people now. And because we have a look at the inside of so many people's lives, to actually see them go again to the top of hedonism mountain, to then come down and be like, it's not worth it, guys. But again, an unteachable lesson, because I'm sure if you had that perspective in front of 1,000 guys and you was like, okay, you can take the family card here, the wife and 2 kids, or you could take the Dan Bilzerian card. I still think a lot of people would line up and take the Dan Bilzerian card.
You're right, but then I think we could divide people pretty safely by experience.
Yeah,
like who's more wise, who's more grounded, we'll know who's going to pick which card. It's almost like saying, oh, here's a fully functioning business, but like the industry is looking solid for the next 20 years. You're going to make this much over time, or here's $1 million. And people will be like, oh, the million.
Yeah.
But like this one is the long play and the safe play, or even, the peaceful play. I know I keep bringing the peace back up, but there's something to it. And different stages of life, different ages.
That's right.
Different goals, circumstances, experiences, preferences, sure. But I do think a universal truth is, whether it's, you're looking from a spiritual lens, to a health lens, to an evolutionary biology lens, to just a modern fulfillment lens, I do think pursuing the right relationship is worth every ounce of effort, no matter what.
Absolutely, man. And it's another testament to that idea of changing your mind again, because even if I reflect on myself in those two alternate worlds at radically different stages of life, when I was 22, young, dumb, full of cum, an idiot, no orienting principles, no spirituality, none of that, I would have been hedon as a mountain guy.
Yeah.
But now at 36 years old, like, that version of me is like dead and gone, just like evaporated. There's none of that left. But at that time, if that message would have found me, it would have landed so differently. So
it's like putting your hand on the stove.
Yeah.
This is why and maybe this is something that would change about the book, is because I think it was probably a little more hardcore about like hey, I don't believe that people need to have a hoe phase or casual dating. But then it's like the hand on the stove when you're young does serve you well. Like, I was 3 or 4 years old. I still remember putting my hand on the stove. Yeah. That motherfucker hurt.
Do it again, right?
I've not done it since, at least on purpose.
Yeah.
But I don't like live in that moment. But to what degree does one need to put how long do they need to leave their hand on the stove?
Yes.
And I don't think we're going to figure that out in this conversation. But it is a very interesting question.
It is.
And I do think that, again, looking back on the book, we can always strive for high ideals. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
But it's about setting the expectation. Like, if you know what you want, don't lie to a man or woman about you want, because there's plenty of people that want what you want.
Yeah.
Whether that's a short-term thing, a fling, cuffing season, whatever it is, or looking for the right person to have babies with, So I think as long as you tell the truth, go experience what you need to experience. I don't think that that's evil. And that's a different opinion than I would have had from probably when I wrote the book.
It's a good razor, man. Like, the truth shall set you free, even if it leads you down some adventurous and maybe, like paths that other people would judge, but at least it's true. At least it's not manipulative then in that sense. So honesty is the best policy, right? There's a reason they say that. Well, let's shift into romance for a minute, because romance is not dead. I don't believe romance is dead. We're on the cusp here. This will come out a few days before Valentine's Day. It's the day we celebrate love. It's the day we give roses to our betrothed, and we, bring back the romance. What do you think about romance? Is romance a skill? What is romance? What is it?
I don't know, man. For everything I've spent time on, I don't feel like I'm very good at romance.
You're not super Mr. Romantic?
I guess not.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been married before. I went on a lot of dates, and I'm a data person. But I think more men probably resonate with that than not. Like, they want to be romantic.
For sure.
But sometimes we don't know how.
Yeah.
And, I had a friend get engaged recently, and he custom designed this ring and surprised his now, fiance and all these things. And it's like, oh, that's so romantic. I'm like, well, that is really romantic. I wonder how he had time for that. And it's like, so the point to that is, I guess it depends on where you're at and who you're with.
Yeah.
If you've been married before and then you come together, it's like maybe romance looks a little different than when it's like your first time and you're like excited to do all these things. Or maybe romance is just having the courage to be thoughtful, with flowers is a very obvious point. But again, when you get into things, or you go on a lot of dates, or you're working on yourself, your business, your health, sometimes the little things are the most romantic, is what I've found. And therefore they're the easiest to forget to do.
Yeah. What, obviously we're recording this a few weeks ahead of schedule of releasing it, so you've probably not thought about this, but if you start thinking about how you would like to spend Valentine's Day with your loved one, what might that look like? How would you design a nice evening? What's your personal flavor?
I love mocktails at a different spot. There's a lot of great spots in Austin, and because we are the way we are about health, we don't go out to eat a lot. We don't do the processed foods. We make a lot of meals at home, but there's something about going out to a nice ambiance, having somebody wait on you, having a mocktail. It's fruit and salt and these other things, and just talking about whatever comes up, because so often we got to do this, that, the other, and this is our goals, and this is what we're working towards. You don't really slow down. And so I like to do nice dinners. Like, we had our date anniversary, our anniversary for our relationship a couple weeks ago. But and they seem very run of the mill, but I just find the more ambitious you are, the more busy you are, the harder it is to slow down. And so I think for special occasions like that, that's my go-to. It's just like slowing down. And it's fun to check off the list, have a list of places that you want to go, and you go to each of them once. It kind of has that sense of adventure that you're having with one another, even though what you're doing together, the shared experience is similar, but the conversation is never the same, which is also what's really fun.
Yeah, I like that. When going back to kind of more of the dating principle, because part of the dating game, it's so fun, right? It's so fun, especially when you have a successful first date and you feel something, like there's a spark. Wow, there could be something here. How do you think, do you talk about this much in your work and in the book about like desire? Like what is the man's role in creating like healthy polarity, healthy attraction? What do you think are some of the things you think about to try and encourage men to do and to be in order to appear attractive, to come across as confident? What are some of the things that you think about there?
I have this metaphor of the stool, because stools have 4 legs for a reason. And so before you even get on the first date and you're creating this as a desire and these kinds of things, you need to have a life that you love, and you need to pick your stool legs. And each leg essentially represents a category of your life where most of your attributes are being, or rather most of your resources and your time and your focus are being funneled into these things. And so for me, and for most men, I think the mandatory legs of the stool are like health, relationships, and vocation, or whatever you're spending the majority of your time doing. And then the other one is should be hobbies or something else that gives you a little more play, rounds you out, lets you have an outlet and some reprieve from the other things. And relationships is not just romantic relationships, right?
Yeah,
it's like your family, your friends, and your acquaintances and things like that. And so if these 4 legs aren't pretty sturdy, you probably shouldn't be going out on dates. But if they are, I think you look so much more desirable by default to women. Women that are going to be relationship material, that are worth your time, are looking for a man who has a full life that's in balance. And I think the balance is the top of the stool, right? That if one of these legs is a more absurdly large or reinforced and the other's weak, it's not much of a secure stool. You can't put a nice bum there for holding potential. And so I think that's the first thing before you even go on the first date. And then it goes back to removing the filters. There's so many different risk culture, pickup, this is the right thing, scripted stuff. I don't believe in any of it. I think the process of allowing yourself to be comfortable enough to say exactly what's on your mind without holding back, without filtering it, without tailoring it, is actually one of the most attractive pieces, because it actually shows confidence versus, and you can get, what's the right thing to say, this, that, and back to the analysis paralysis. But it also is an organic filter to draw someone who likes who you are in, or push the wrong person away. Right. So I don't really think about like, how do we attract women? What's the desire? Like, I think like, how many filters can we remove? How unabashedly yourself can you show up on the first date? Because that's going to be magnetic to the right person. Yeah. I'm not trying to say you should be attracting all the people. You should be attracting the right person. Yeah. I think that goes with women too. It obviously looks different. I think men need to always take action and initiate. It's our job to build momentum, to offer. And it's the woman's job to determine if she wants to accept the offer or not. Yeah. And I know we kind of touched on that earlier, but it goes back to what I think it came to mind when we were talking about, okay, what are the tactics that you would employ? Number one is always ask for what you desire. Always be willing to have that conversation, to show that, because sometimes actions and body language are infinitely better than words. But other times you talk about it. And as long as you're doing the input, you don't have to worry about the output, which seems counterintuitive because men do these things because they want a certain output. But the irony is, as long as you're putting the right things in, you're going to have a chance to follow up with that or have a subsequent action item after you get the output. But leave the output to the woman. Offer this, then they're going to give you a signal. Okay, then offer something else. You don't need to think 30 steps ahead. All you have to do is do the one step. Yeah. And that's what makes it so fun, honestly, is because you have no idea how it's going to go. So why would you rehearse these things that are almost like an equation for you don't know what the outcome's going to be.
Yeah.
It's almost better to be really good on your feet and shooting from the hip and winging it.
For sure.
And it's so much more fun.
So much more fun.
So much more fun. That's a long answer, but that's what I see benefit guys the most, is get out of their heads from what's the right thing to do to like, how do I want to handle this? And then she reacts, she's like, oh, what can I do with that?
Yeah.
Without compromising, obviously, like who I am and what I want, but like, okay, let's roll with it. It's almost like improv comedy with a dating spin.
Yeah.
As long as you don't get too far away from being who you are and too close to the performative aspect.
Yeah. I think that's so good, because you always know who you are and what to say if you're tapped into that. But if you're going in and you're trying to like game plan this and you've got a rehearsed line of hooks or things you're going to say, well, what happens when she throws you the curveball and you were like, no, the plan is breaking down, and now you're fumbling and stumbling and now you're in your head and it's game over. As opposed to, well, if I just optimize for being as most authentically me as I can possibly be, I can't get too far lost, because I just come back to like, what's true for me right now? What do I want to say? I think I said this to you on our first call, but it bears repeating again, because it's this idea of, like you said, shedding the filters. Paul Chek said this one time and it stuck with me. There's 4 people in a relationship. There's who you really are, who she really is, who you're pretending to be, and who she's pretending to be. And what you're saying is try and get rid of who she's pretending to be and who you're pretending to be as quickly as possible. So who you really are and who she really is can meet and see if there's a connection there. Because the worst thing that people can do is fall in love with a persona. She fell in love with who you were pretending to be. And as the relationship deepens, they're going to see that was a facade. At some point, it's going to crack. And she didn't love you for who you were. She loved you for who you were pretending to be. And some of that is going to be you. But what happens when the mask starts to come off and now there's no connection? Or on the same instance, she was pretending to be somebody else. So like, you can't control what another person does. You can't control whether this person is pretending to be somebody that they're not. All you can do is be as radically, honestly, as fully as who you are, warts and all, and hope that leadership, which often comes from the masculine perspective, will invite her to drop whatever performative stuff she has too.
Exactly. And that's where it comes back to the input. It's if you set this as like, this is how I'm doing this, they're more likely to meet you there, which is typically from the man side of thing. But a lot of women who really know who they are won't buckle or might be the first to do it if the man doesn't. So I think it is a really useful tool for men and for women. But you nailed, I mean, you almost said verbatim, part of what I went into in the book is kind of stressing hey, the better you can do it up front. And look, nobody's going to be perfect. It's really hard to do this. It sounds simple, and authenticity is a great buzzword, but in practice, it's difficult because you have the urge from, the evolutionary social psychology to want to conform to being received well.
Of course.
And so it's really difficult to fight that, but I think anyone can master it with practice, to where you're marrying these who you're coming off as and who you actually are. The closer, or rather the more that you reduce the distance between the two of them, that there's a sweet spot there, and it might not ever be perfect. So I wouldn't want to say, oh, you should expect to be 100% yourself from the get-go. Like, nerves are natural, fear is natural, but the more you can reduce the gap between those two versions of yourself, I think that the happier you'll be in the long run. Because when you set false expectations, like you said, 3, 4, 6, 2 years, 6 months, 2 years down the road, everyone's going to be unhappy. Everyone's going to be unhappy.
Yeah, there's definitely, we can take anything too far. So yes, I believe in being who you are and radical authenticity and stuff. But at the same time, if you take that to its ultimate edge, you could be like, all right, well, I'll be as honest as I need to fart right now, and you're ripping ass at the table. Or I don't usually brush my teeth, and you turn up like a grub. No, it's polished, right? It's like staying true to the essence of who you are, what you want, and your values. But of course, you're going to polish yourself a little bit. You're going to present yourself in your best light, and you should do that. But not present yourself as who you're not.
It's just like this, honestly. Like, I put on pants today for this.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I knew you were going to put on pants, so I put on pants. Look at that. We're going to perform shoes. A little bit. Not shoes. They can't see that.
I know I shouldn't have worn my shoes.
There they are. The dogs. Actually, that's for the OnlyFans. I do want to talk about one thing before we start wrapping it up, which I think is important, because I'm glad you mentioned that Stool thing, and you said relationships outside of romantic relationships. Friendships. Men, we were talking off air. I know you've had a friend that you lost through suicide, and I recently went through this too. And it really breaks your heart, especially when you've known people personally. and you just didn't know they were suffering in that way, or maybe you knew they were suffering, but you never thought they would do this, and ultimately, you know, they do what they do, and you've got to make peace with that in your own way that you do. And I think one of the issues might be there that they didn't really feel like they had anywhere left to turn. I think if somebody really did feel like they could come to someone, it might be the difference between them making that decision or not. And whether it's true or not, because I would have been there for the friend I'm talking about, he didn't feel it, he didn't believe it, he didn't have those relationships in his life.
Yeah.
And we hear all the time now about the male loneliness epidemic and all of this stuff. You've got the walk and talks that you do, and you're very connected. I know it's a really big part of your life, and you've prioritized it, and it probably profoundly helps the people in that and your mental health. But I know there's a lot of guys that don't have that.
Yeah.
How important is it, and where do they begin to build a sense of brotherhood and friendships and relationships outside of the romantic scene?
Yeah, I get close to tears when I think about that, because I did lose someone close to me, and also I went through that myself when I was younger, and maybe that's why I put such an emphasis on connections with men, is because we all are so, and I was just talking to my best friend back home about this, we are all so willing to be the sacrificial lamb, but we're so also at the same token so hesitant to ask for help. And that's why we get into these spirals and we make these decisions, and we feel like I'm weak for asking for help, for leaning on someone. And then that's what, leads to the irreversible. And it's a damn shame. And I think the best way to have good men in your life is, it goes back to the 4 legs on the stool. When you're doing these things, you're probably going to be out in the world, right? Like whether you're into cars or run clubs, or you like playing D&D and video games, it really doesn't matter. There's going to be other guys doing these things. And whether or not they say it, men want men that they have things in common with, that they can lean on, and that they can talk, they can have fun and escape the things in life that are tough for them, but they also know that maybe these other guys are dealing with it too. Mm-hmm. And I think the best thing that you can do is say, hey, let's go for a walk sometime. Again, that's my go-to, or whatnot. Or it's like, hey, let's go golfing sometime. Whatever the activity is, because men sometimes don't need to talk about explicitly. I think at times they do, but there's a certain amount of rapport that needs to be built prior to that. Maybe not for you and me, because we talk for a living, but for the average guy, I think that's the case.
It's usually a do first, talk after.
Yes. And just go do things that make you happy with other guys who like doing the same things. Yeah. And before you know it, you'll have friends that you can rely on. And I know there's a lot of times where you're, maybe there's a health issue, or you're stressed about a relationship or finances or whatever, but I have almost backed out of hanging out with a buddy a lot. And I have backed out a few times, and I've always regretted the times I backed out, and the times that I ended up going and meet with them or doing the activity or talking with them or whatever it was, I left so much lighter. And I don't think that I would be here without being willing to spend time and also prioritizing building bromances, as I call them, or going on these stud strolls. They've truly been a lifesaver.
Yeah. It's important, man. I know it's important. I feel it. I feel exactly what you just said in my own life with the close men that I've got, and this kind of stuff just puts it right back in the forefront of your awareness. Yeah. And it's a damn shame, man. And I think you're right. If you just invite your buddies over and you're like, all right, let's talk about feelings, there might be some distance there. But if you're like, let's come and help me fix my fence, then 20 minutes and you're talking about feelings anyway. Because we bond over like this shared effort, this shared struggle, this shared mastery. But then it opens up and it breaks the walls down. And we just need that in whichever way we find it. And man, if for whatever reason you don't have it in your personal life, this is the positive side of the online space. Like you can find communities, you can find help, and I just implore that you do, because the alternative is the blast radius of that level of destruction is so heartbreaking for everybody involved, and it's a waste of a life, at the end of the day. And it's just it breaks my heart more than anything, because I think of how lonely those final moments must feel when you've made that decision that this is the way you're going to go, and how painful that must feel when you're leaving behind life and love and your children and your wife and all of that stuff, and you still think that that's the only solution, that somehow you've convinced yourself that the world would be better off without you. It's not the case. The world would be better off with you in it, and try whatever you need to do to lean on people and have bromances and have stud walks or whatever your manifestation of that is. So it doesn't have to get that dark, you know?
Yeah. And the irony for the full circle with all this is one of the biggest green flags from a woman's perspective is a man who has healthy relationships with other men. You know, and it doesn't mean that you got to be, you know, super mushy gushy about it. Just like other good men in your life will benefit you, and also your ability to find the right woman and seal the deal with the right woman. And when it comes to friendships, not having friendships that are questionable with the opposite gender.
Yeah.
And I don't think we got time to go into all that now, but my buddy that I lost I was telling you about, and condolences again for your friend. It really is a damn shame. He was a true stud. I wrote about him a little bit in the book, and it was kind of I don't believe in fear mongering, but it was my way to say, hey, sometimes there's a cost to this stuff. He had a lot of casual flings, but he was one of those guys later in his life, he really wanted a relationship. But after quite a few, it became increasingly more and more difficult. And I'm not saying, oh, you know, if you have a high body count or if you go on too many casual dates, like, you know, this is the outcome. But it did fracture his soul because it was a ridiculous amount. And I think it's an extreme example that shows us an underlying problem. And I don't, again, say that to really shame anyone, but I say it to kind of combat this idea that just because someone's, you know, getting laid or has beautiful women around means that guy is really happy internally, because that's ultimately what led him to do what he did. And he was intelligent. He had a good job. He was like, not only the prime genetics, but was also pushing himself. So he's a huge, you know, competitor in the CrossFit space. And so, he literally had it all. Yeah. From an outside perspective.
Yeah, that's right.
But not the inside perspective. So like, you know, to honor, and he was a good dude, you know, it's not like he wished this upon himself. I'm sure your friend was too. Yeah. And so I wasn't expecting to get here, but I think that's a really big piece of all of this is, it's hard to be a good man. And sometimes we're too hard on ourselves, whether it's because of the lack of a relationship or the relationship with ourselves. And I do think that having good men in your corner solves both those problems.
Yeah, very well said, my friend. Let's bring this one into land. Yeah. What's next? What are you excited about? What are you working on? We're still here in the hangover of the new year, just mid-January, 2026. What's ahead?
Well, we're 2 weeks in, which is crazy because that's like 4 or 5% of the year by my math. But let's not talk about that.
And an awful lot of resolutions failed already.
Yeah, that's true. I think a lot of people sit in a chair when they record something and they want to have answers. And I used to always want that. I don't know. Yeah. I feel really good about 2026 and some very exciting things are on the horizon, but I honestly don't know. Yeah. And I think for the first time in my life, I'm enjoying that. So cheers to like knowing the direction, but not knowing the details. That's a first for me. What about you?
There's a quote from a book by Boyd Varty. He says, I don't know where I'm going, but I know exactly how to get there. And I think that's the essence of what you're talking about. And I feel that too, you know, there's goals, I guess, you know, there's sitting here right now, I would love the podcast to grow and reach more ears and eyeballs. And I would love to amplify impact, but really I'm just along for the adventure, man. Yeah. I want to just sit down and have meaningful conversations. I want to be a more present and better father. I want to continue to learn how to be a better husband. I want to continue to just evolve. I want to continue to serve. And I'm kind of open to where it takes me, where the wind blows, you know, and that's something that is really refreshing, to not be so wedded to the outcomes again. Like the process of just the daily showing up and the daily work and enjoying the highs, and some lows are going to come along for the ride because they do. And can I take it all in stride? Can I grow through it all? So I feel that. Yeah. All right, man. Well, we made another one.
Yeah, we did.
We made another one.
See you next year.
We'll see you next year. Let's do it. Thank you, mate. Where can people go to just keep up with what you're up to and all that fun stuff?
Yeah. On Instagram, Animal Baits. I I have a lot of dating stuff on there. I am leaning back into the health stuff too, because they're so pertinent, like we talked about. But if they really want to get into the weeds, the book is a great place to start. The Dating Edge on Amazon by Christopher Bates. And then if they want to have a free strategy call with me, whether that's health or dating, they can go to batesdates.com.
Boom. Pick up the book. Let's blow it up. Let's get this.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Thank you for coming out again. It's been fun. All right, you lot. Stay radical. Hold your loved ones. Get on a bro walk. Do it all. We love you. Peace. All right, friends. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps to spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.